hotel. No kidding. Here we go. Let's rock and roll. Call the meeting to order. All commissioners are present tonight except Commissioner Waddell is out of town. Item number 2, invocation and flag salute. Invocation this evening will be by Commissioner Norwood. Flag salute by Colonel Danielson. So, Commissioner Norwood, would you like to?
Would everyone stand? Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus, God, we thank you for this day, for this is the day that you've made. You told us to rejoice and be glad in it. Lord, we're asking you for your forgiveness. We're thanking you for all that you do good. Lord, we're just asking a blessing upon America, upon every country in this world. Lord, we ask that you would touch this land, heal this land, Lord, in the name of Jesus. Lord, we're asking that you bless us tonight in this meeting, teach us and show us how to govern, help us to make the right decisions, not out of selfishness, but out of love and kindness for your people. And Lord, we just ask for your blessings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Norwood and Colonel Danielson. Appreciate it. Item number 3, minutes. Item 3.1, consider approval of minutes of the regular commission meeting of June 6th, 2020.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion or corrections? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Item number 4, awards, presentations, proclamations, and organizational business. Item 4.1, recognize City of Enid Employees of the Month. Gerald?
Well, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, and everybody. We take this opportunity about once a month to recognize some hardworking city employees. And we have 3 employees to recognize tonight. And I know one of them's here in person. So Daryl, would you come on up? And James, would you come on up, please? Daryl Stubbs has been a long time employee of the city of Enid. He's been in tech services. He's been in water production. He may have been other places. But our city employees are nominated by other city employees. So Daryl's done a great job for us for a long time. I thought, James, you might talk about all the great things he does for you right now in water production.
I'll think of something.
Okay.
Like City Manager says, Daryl's been with the city for, I think, off and on, you said 12 years, I think? 12 years. And he's been with water production for about right at a year, if I remember right. I think is what you told me. He takes care of all of our SCADA systems that we have that runs the water plants, takes care of a lot of electrical that we have at the plants, goes out in the fields, takes care of our radios, PLCs. He just does a lot of stuff. Not only does he pull on call for us, he pulls on call for tech support, and he goes out and works at the wastewater plant. I think you can go to the garage and fix their heaters when their heaters break. So he does a lot of stuff for the city of Enid. He's a great asset for water production and for the city of Enid. And it's been a pleasure working with him. Thank you.
Well, Daryl, you get a parking space, you get a plaque, and you get a coin. And so at least that's a start to show our appreciation. Thanks for all you've done. And you also get an opportunity to
I'm very humbled by it, but there's far more deserving people.
Well, you're very deserving. Thank you for everything you do for the city. The next employee is in our payroll department. Our county department does payroll, which if anybody's ever done payroll, it's hard to do anyway. But with the city of Enid, I don't even know how many groups we have. We have AFSCME and FOPs and MCs and part-timers and probably other groups that I can't even think of right now. Susan does a great job. She's been with us, it seems like, Aaron, for more than 10 years or so.
A little over 10 years.
Yeah, and so Susan couldn't be with us tonight, so we will present this to her tomorrow. She's probably watching on TV. Thanks for what you do, Susan. You do a great job for the city of Enid. Aaron, would you like to come up and say a few words about Susan? Silly hold.
No, I really appreciate Susan. Actually, Susan was my very first hire when I was the accounting manager for the city, and she has just done a great job at the city. She's done accounts payable and helped with several areas with project accounting, and has moved into payroll, and she's done a really great job there. It is very complex payroll. We have 6 employee groups and some contract employees, and all of them are paid differently. And so it's a lot to keep up with and a lot of reporting to do to state agencies and federal, and she does a fantastic job with that.
All right.
And we also have Monty Prawl. I don't know that Monty could be with us tonight, but I do see Everett. You want to come on up? Monty has been in our technical services department. He is a maintenance technician. And so Monty does a lot of stuff. He does a lot of stuff around this building in particular, but he also works at the library and other facilities maintaining our buildings. Monty's a guy that just does his job, doesn't complain, and it's pleasant to be around. He takes care of stuff. So Everett, you want to say a few more things? And here's a plaque we'll give to him tomorrow.
Okay, sure. Monty, I've only known him for about a year or so because he hasn't been here that long, a couple of years maybe, but he does a really good job. He's got a big task. We've got several facilities he's got to maintain and keep things going, doorknobs falling off, tighten up, and things like that. So he stays busy at all times, and he really keeps going. So I really appreciate what he's done.
All right.
One for Monty. He's probably watching tonight. Hey, Monty, good job.
All right. Item 4.2, consider appointment to the Police Civil Service Commission. I believe we've got 6 candidates that are interested and 1 vacancy to fill. So what I'd like to do is give the opportunity for those that have asked to be considered to come forward and say whatever you'd like. So if, I'll just take them in order on the slip here. Mike Burrow, are you here?
How y'all doing?
Good, good.
Well, it's been a while since I applied for that position. It was last year when I did the Citizens Police Academy. I did it over here at the Enid Police Department, and it was very informative, everything. A lot of people don't know what's going on and, you know, different things like that, what the officers go through and everything else. And then, you know, kind of, when I came here the last time, they was trying to fill the spot, and there wasn't very many, so I decided to help out a little bit and try to help out with some of these committees that were, you know, holding vacancies. So I just try to do my part and help out. I've been a resident of Enid for pretty much all my life. Been around, know several of the people on the board and people around, some of the officers and stuff like that, and they're, you know, good group of people and everything. One thing I can say is I just decided to apply for it to help out. That's all it was. So, man, I don't have anything else to say.
Okay, good enough. Well, thanks, sir.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Yep. Next up, April Danahay.
Thank you. I'm April Danahay. I have served on the Police Civil Service and the Fire Civil Service Commission before in the past. I have a long record of HR, human resources skills that I continue to do today. I have a history with the police department, a long history with the police department. Didn't work there, but I know about it, and I think I have all the qualifications to continue serving our community in this capacity. Thank you.
Let's see, extensive involvement with the police department, is that a, oh, never mind. Just
Long criminal record.
being a wide guy, okay. Thank you, April. Corey Melvin.
Well, like Miss Anna Hay and Mr. Burrows, just trying to help out, do what I can for my community. I've lived here all my life, just taking little baby steps as I can. So whatever I can do to help you guys out, let me know.
All right, good. Thank you. Milton Mitchell.
Milton Mitchell, and a long time born, raised in Enid, Oklahoma. I applied for this position because I would like to see a little more diversity with our police department, and I think that I could help to facilitate that, reaching out into the community to hopefully bring other people into the police department. I was also concerned about their pay, which I'm glad to know that they are getting some kind of a pay increase as far as our police. We have a really good police department that I think is striving to be progressive and to move us forward. And in today's climate, we absolutely need that. And I think that I could help facilitate that. And if given an opportunity to serve, I will to the best of my ability. So I hope you will consider me.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Claire Buzzard. Okay. Richard Devon.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Obviously, most of you know I've served on the city council in the past. I've served on many boards and commissions, state level, local level. I don't have the human resources capabilities that April does, which are vast. Have deep family experience in law enforcement and have always promoted that throughout my life, and would appreciate the consideration to serve the city one more time. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, sir. Allison Malev. Okay. Don't see him. Okay, commissioners, we have 7 candidates. Only one can be elected, so selected. So please make your choice.
Too bad we don't have more than one position open because we got a lot of good candidates.
We do, yeah. We absolutely do. It's funny how that rolls. It goes kind of in waves. When you got 3 positions open, it's like you're wondering if you're ever going to get enough people, and then others, it's like this. So anyway, yeah, I appreciate all the candidates stepping forward. Next up, we will consider, while we're counting the ballots, we'll consider appointment to the Enid Joint Recreation Triad. We're going to have 3 candidates that have applied for that position. We can select one. Again, we'll give each person an opportunity to speak if they wish. Kevin
Bezdacek.
Sent forwarded to each one of us a list of what he thought was his qualifications. He's unable to be here tonight because he's with a family member at a softball USSSA 13U softball national championship. So it's hard to fault anybody that's trying to take care of family and raise their kids right. But anyway, he listed some of the reasons that he thought he would be good for this, and each one of us got a copy of that. Second person is Grant Mason. Are you here? Grant?
Hi, my name's Grant Mason. Brief background about me, my education. I received an undergraduate and a graduate degree from Oklahoma State, TCU. I currently work as an agronomy manager and logistics manager for Wheeler Brothers Grain, covering most of western Oklahoma. I'm seeking this position because I think that we need more young people being involved on these committees, and I think that I could have a positive impact on EJRT. I grew up playing all sports and involved in all kinds of recreation, and I played baseball throughout college. During that time, I helped conduct youth camps, did private instruction for local kids. I also understand how demanding maintenance and upkeep is for athletic facilities. I understand how difficult it is to get volunteers and people in your community to support these programs. I think that we have kids today, I think they're continuing to distance themselves from these programs that we offer, that EJRT offers. And I think that we as a community have to start thinking outside the box in order to rejuvenate interest in these programs. My work allows the flexibility of a flexible work schedule. I'm willing and I have a desire to commit the time and the effort that's needed and required to serve EJRT, and hopefully we can continue to improve that organization. So if there are no questions, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, the last candidate is Merle Conrady, Cordray, I'm sorry. He also forwarded an email. He is out of town also with sports activities for children, I think. So he sent along to each one of us what his thoughts were on that. So those are the three that are considering, that have asked to be appointed to this board. So if you would, go ahead and select one of the three. Thank you. Okay, the results for the Police Civil Service Commission. Let's see, I'll read the candidate and who they received votes from. April Danahay had 1 vote from Mayor Pankinen. Richard Devon had 2 votes, 1 from Commissioner Stallings, 1 from Commissioner Mason. And Milton Mitchell had 3 votes, 1 from Commissioner Allen, 1 from Commissioner Norwood, 1 from Commissioner Ezell. The successful applicant is Milton Mitchell. Congratulations, sir. And thank you to each of you that stepped forward to serve the community. And I hope this doesn't discourage you. In fact, I hope I hope to see your names on other requests for appointment in the future. So thank you very much. I think it's right here, so wait. Okay. For the Enid Joint Recreation Triad, EJRT Committee, there was 1 vote for Merle Cordray, that was Mayor Pankinen, and 4 votes for Grant Mason, that was Commissioner Allen, Commissioner Norwood, Commissioner Ezell, and Commissioner Stallings. The new person being appointed is Grant Mason. Congratulations, sir, and thank you to all the rest for applying.
Mayor, may we ask the candidates if they'd like to leave now?
We certainly may.
You don't want to stick around. It gets pretty boring after this.
Yeah. No, you're welcome to leave. It's not impolite. In fact, in today's COVID-19 environment, it's probably responsible. If you wish to leave, you certainly may do so. Again, congratulations and thank you all for participating.
Thank you, folks.
There might be another chair or two out there now, right? Okay, good. Okay, item number 5, hearings. 5.1, hold a public hearing on and consider adoption of an ordinance amending the Enid Municipal Code 2014, Title 11, entitled Zoning, Chapter 1, entitled Purpose, Interpretation, Definitions, to amend Section 11.1.7, definitions, and to add commercial medical marijuana grow facility, and clarify definition of plant nursery, Chapter 5, Agricultural General District, to add commercial medical marijuana grow facility as a permitted use. Chapter 7, Commercial Districts, Article B, C1 Light Commercial District, to add commercial medical marijuana grow facility as a use by review. Article D, C3 General Commercial District, to add commercial medical marijuana grow facility as a permitted use, providing for repealer, savings clause, severability, and codification. I believe we covered this in a study session a couple of weeks ago, so,
I'll move to approve.
okay.
Do we have
Maybe some-
anyone who's?
Oh, this is the hearing, sorry.
Oh, it's a hearing,
Yes.
yeah.
If,
Okay.
if there's, yes. Would you
Okay.
like to speak to the ordinance? Okay.
Sure.
First off, my name's Terry Simmel. Most of you, I know most people in here, it's really a pleasure, and it was good to hear the words you said about the police department, because I think those guys are tried and true and have gone through so much, especially in these changing times, so good job on that. I retired after 35 years with United Parcel Service, been involved in the community, been on board of directors with United Way from 95 to 2000, I think, or 90 to 95, somewhere right in there. Been on a lot of allocations boards, very community-oriented, vice president of the HOA on Pheasant Run, Community East. So we're really very community-oriented. And what we've got is just a simple barn that's on some acreage that has 2 inside rooms that we're wanting to make a grow room and a flowering room. And part of the reasoning for this, my mom passed away with cancer, and I got into the medical aspects of trying to grow medical marijuana, and we are in coordination with a broker that will broker it out. So there will never be any traffic out there other than Kathy and myself. And it's small. I'm retired. I retired this last year. I don't plan on making it something that I'm going to have to be out there working 24 hours a day. We do have security. We do have audio, video, and motion detectors. And it's going to be inside of a barn. Now, when we first brought this up, Bob Berry, you know, Bob's Farms, he brought up that, whoa, is this going to be some big outdoor grow thing? No, absolutely not. It's just 2 inside sealed rooms inside of a sealed barn, and we've been working really hard to kind of keep it sealed up. We're using LEDs and fluorescent lights.
Sir, let me just jump in there. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think we confused this item with, this is the marijuana ordinance. Your rezoning's coming up still, and so I certainly, do you want to finish talking about it or talk about it? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now, on the ordinance, then, what we're just basically saying also is we've been through a lot of different audits and things through EPS and OSHA, and compliance and Keter audits. I've made sure that by the state and by the OMMA laws, that we're 100% compliant, and that's one of the things, because I'm really seriously, I get into compliance issues, so I want to make sure that we're one of the top 1% of the people that are doing this. So, okay, so with that, that's really all I've got.
That's all right. Thank you.
And just so we're clear, I don't believe that the ordinance change we're looking at would still allow grow houses in agricultural zoned districts. It just wouldn't allow grow houses in certain residential zonings.
Right.
That's all it is. So what you've proposed and what you've requested in your subsequent agenda item is in no way impacted by this ordinance, because as is appropriate, you're requesting a zoning change to agricultural, which is the appropriate zoning anyway. So you're doing everything right, and we appreciate you.
Just wanted to make sure. I appreciate it.
Okay.
And they did vote 4-1 in favor of. One just said he'd like to look at the ordinances. I'm just asking that we maybe stick with the state and the OMMA guidelines, and that would be awesome.
Okay.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Okay, so just to make clear, this is an ordinance which makes a distinction between plant nurseries and a commercial marijuana grow facility that will not have customers. It's just a wholesale production, and it basically does not allow that kind of facility in residential zones, but it would allow it in agriculture, commercial, and industrial. And if anyone wants to speak to this specific ordinance, not anything else, right now is the time.
Right.
Valentin Alatorre,
Yes, sir.
302 East Ohio.
I see you again. Yep.
Yes, I see you too. I am not a police officer. However, the reason I came here is due to this ordinance that probably going to be voted for. I'm not here to be against it. I just don't think, I think there should be more clarification. There's buildings that are zoned industrial. I think it should also be mentioned here. Abandoned buildings and stuff like that could be, also be used for this. That certain properties could be used more, could be used for something that's not currently being used at all in the city limits. Obviously with the guidelines through OMMA, city ordinance. I too am in the process of getting into the medical marijuana business. And I have been going through all the rules and regulations through the city, the state, and everything. And maybe Carol can speak of it more thoroughly. I guess what I'm saying is a plant nursery, I did a use by review for a plant nursery. And the reason I went that route is because when you apply for your OMMA license for growing, you have to get a plant nursery license through the Department of Agriculture, okay? So when I went through the city ordinance zoning, there's certain things that you could put at certain zones. So when I went down the list, it said plant nursery. That's something I had to get through the Department of Agriculture. So which I have done it. I went through the process, all the legal process, and I was approved. I am just here to ensure all the money I have invested doesn't go to waste. I have been told periodically, several times, repeatedly, that I will be grandfathered in because what I have done was before this ordinance will pass. I just want more clarification that I will be grandfathered in for my plant nursery to have a grow facility, which was approved by the ordinance, city ordinance at that time.
Yes, sir, I can answer that for you. Carol and I have both spoken to you. Yes, you received a use by review at
Yeah, that's
MAPC
correct.
to allow that.
Right.
So yes, you will be able to do that on that property. What this ordinance does, though, is define a commercial grow facility. And the intent behind it is to put it in agricultural, industrial, or commercial areas. And C1, I think it still allows a use by review. That's really the intent, not to allow a commercial grow facility in a residential area.
Okay.
So,
Unless
but it
the
will not-
property owner gets the property rezoned appropriately
Yes.
and meets all the other
Yes.
rezoning requirements.
Yes, sir. So you're not impacted
Okay.
by this.
Okay, I
ordinance.
appreciate it. Thank you for putting that.
It also does not impact patients or caregivers. Though those still would have the ability to grow the product on, or the medicine on their own property in the limited amounts that are allowed by state law.
Thank you, Carol.
Individuals are not.
Individuals or caregivers, yes.
Yeah.
Another thing is that I noticed on the background, on the agenda item report, it says I-1, I-2, I-3 will be allowed. However, when you read it, it doesn't mention it on the, it only talks about commercial and agricultural.
I can explain that.
Yes. Which that's obviously y'all's choice. I'm just saying my opinion.
The reason why it is that way is because some of the zoning classifications grow as you go through it. So for instance, I-1 allows everything that's in C3. So it says that it's allowed in C3, so then when you read I-1, it'll say all uses in C3.
Right.
So it builds up
Well, thank you.
in a crescendo.
Right. Well, that's all I need. Thank you.
Thank you.
I second the motion by Ben.
There was no motion, it's just the hearing. I just
hearing.
Oh,
But
well,
it is a
it's
combined
joint.
item.
It's a
If it-
combined.
We have one
But there
more
may be other talk.
person who would like to
Yes, sir.
speak to it.
Lady, gentlemen,
Yep.
Mr. Wallace, remember, this is regarding just this commercial
Right.
marijuana.
I'm just going to come right out and say it. I have done the research to find that marijuana was unlawfully outlawed, and I can prove it. I have shared a link to a page that I run on my Facebook. It's actually quite popular. There's almost 7,000 members that follow it, and I can prove it. That's all I had to say.
Anyone else? I'll make a motion to approve this ordinance change.
Okay, motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. All right. Item number 6, community development. Item number 6.1, conduct a public hearing to consider rezoning 3 tracts of land located to the east of Autry Tech Center and directly behind the center on West Willow Road in Garfield County to special use.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, City Management. The slide on the screens in front of you, the blue line outlines the tracts that are being considered for rezoning this evening, and that big red dot is at Willow Van Buren. My next slide, you will recognize a little bit better. The red area is SU. This is where Autry Tech is. This is the property that they've required. You can see we have some C3 here, we have some C2, and all of that is detailed in the legal description. We also want to make sure that we have access to road, water, and sewer, and this slide shows that we do. The Planning Commission reviewed this. Their recommendation is to approve. Like your previous item, this is a hearing. There may be somebody that wants to speak to it. The next item will be a companion that you will vote on, and actually is the ordinance.
Okay? I don't see that anybody signed up for that unless some people didn't put which agenda item they wanted. So is there anybody that did not have a chance to sign up or that did and wants to talk to this topic? Okay, seeing none. We will move to 6.2, consider an ordinance to rezone 3 tracts of land located to the east of Autry Tech Center and directly behind the center on West Willow Road in Garfield County to special use.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Item number 6.3, conduct a public hearing to consider rezoning property located at 6401 West Willow Road, consisting of a tract of land of approximately 60 acres from R1 Residential Estate District to A Agricultural District.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
Just like the previous slide, this particular case, we used the color yellow to outline where the property is, and it is in green, and in our comp plan, green means agricultural, so the comp plan supports the rezoning request. We also look to make sure that we have access to infrastructure. In this case, the only infrastructure is Willow, and it's adequate to support the zoning. Sewer and water are clear, as you can see, are east of the property. Planning Commission recommended approval to you. This too is a hearing. There may be, the folks that spoke earlier might want to finish their presentation to you at this time.
Okay. Mr. Simmel, did you have anything else to say, or you got it?
The last little bit is the owner of the property, Jeanette Nelson, she actually, the first 20 acres, she had put as R1 because Dwayne was going to put that in residential subdivisions and going to try to build on that. He's passed away, way too expensive. They just want to put it back to agricultural the way that it was. It was agricultural, went to R1 for residential, just wants to go back to agricultural. It's a full 59 acres there, so it would all be, like I said, agricultural there. So
Okay.
that's it.
All right. Anybody else would like to discuss on this topic? Sir?
Excuse me.
Yes, I'd just like to, Valentino Autry, 302 East Ohio. I'd like to just say I support my soon-to-be competitor. So, yeah. Thank you.
All righty. Anybody else? Seeing none, move on to the next item. Item 6.4, consider an ordinance to rezone property located at 6401 West Willow Road, also known as 6401 West Willow Road, consisting of a tract of land of approximately 60 acres located on the south side of Willow from R1 Residential Estate District to A Agricultural District.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Item number 6.5, approve Spawn Ranch Skate Parks 100% design for City of Enid Skate Park project number P2002C located at 124 North 5th Street between Randolph Avenue and Broadway Avenue on the west side of 5th Street.
Thank you, Mayor. This has been a very good project, got underway April 22nd. I've had the pleasure to work with Commissioner Zell and Commissioner Allen, the Park Board, Corey Buller, our Recreation Supervisor, and we've got the skate community represented at all of our meetings, and worked with our consultant Spawn out of Los Angeles, California. Just quickly, they were also the designers for the skate park in Stillwater, and we chose them because we can use a source well, which will be the item that follows this. We'll discuss price. But before we move to there, we wanted you to see the design and seek your approval. If we don't have your approval, then we need to go back to the drawing board and continue to work. But that gives you a view of each one. Are there any?
How does the water drain out of that?
That's a great question. Let me try to find. I think this is probably a good slide. This right here is a rooftop of Luck and Bill's building. But right here, do you see this? This is an underground drainage structure. So the water flows from north to south. And we are a little bit below grade here in this area, is below the surface. We worked with our engineering, and we're gonna be able to pick up the drainage that gathers here and enter it into the concrete box. That's how that'll be addressed. But the stormwater basically flows from north to south.
That $1 million intersection we're doing the box structure at Randolph and 4th Street is just, well, from this image,
Yeah,
just below where we are. It's that same structure that this will feed right into, or the same channel.
No, I was just wondering how to get it out of the skate area where it looks
Buckets.
like it is below grade.
Lots of buckets.
You'll have to actually look to see the drain because it's a special drain cover that doesn't interrupt
That's my
skating.
next question. How does that work with
It's not a drain that we use in our streets that you're used to seeing.
I'll say, and I'll say briefly that the engineering company we've worked with, they've been really, really fantastic. The meetings that we've had with them and the iterations, they've been incredibly responsive to the requested changes from the park board, from the folks who are actually going to use the park. It's been one of those, if we can do more quality of life projects on this model with these kind of experts who really know what they're doing and can execute something quickly, and that we can pull the trigger and make something happen quickly, we should use this as an example for future projects. It's gone so smooth, and I'm so thrilled with the product they put together.
Okay. Okay.
I guess I'll make a motion to approve the design.
Second.
Okay, motion second. Any other discussion? Commissioner Allen, did you have anything?
No. We should ask, we have some folks signed up to speak. We have some folks here. I don't think any of you signed up to speak. If there's anything you'd like to add, I think you're still welcome to
Yep.
come up and say anything. If you just want to like stand up and say yes, if this is something you still would like, then, that would be fine too, but. Great. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you guys for being here.
Good.
This is state-of-the-art. It was designed specifically for Enid, Oklahoma. We had lots of meetings and talked about it, and lots of input from the fellas. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that, we've had the same skate park for quite some time and kind of sat back and watched every playground and baseball field, basketball court. A lot of places have been renovated and we've kind of been forgotten, and the skate park it's just outdated and dangerous and unusable in the summertime. There's no lights, so we can't go when it cools off, and not every kid plays ball sports, so we got here, we just want somewhere safe and somewhere these kids deserve to go.
Well, if you pardon the pun, I hope we knocked it out of the park.
And I want you to know, he's not the first one we've put to sleep in here.
That's right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item 6.6, accept a Sourcewell price proposal with Spawn Ranch Skate Parks to construct the City of Enid Skate Park, project number P2002C, located at 124 North 5th Street, between Randolph Avenue and Broadway Avenue on west side of 5th Street.
I'd make a motion to approve this with all of the add alternates. In addition to the base bid, the alternates include some additional seating area, concrete pads and benches, drinking fountain. I know that all of this is a little expensive when you think of, just looking at a drinking fountain, but for several $1,000s, but I think we will end up with, I think we need the best version of this we can get because it's going to get used a shocking amount. I think we want to do it right.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I just want to say, item 7.2.
Yep.
Will go along with this item 2. That covers where the money's going to come from, and Aaron can tell you where when we get to that item.
Okay.
I need to make a comment, Mayor.
Yep.
On the background, we worked on a last-minute change to the drinking fountain.
Okay.
And that number is not reflected correctly in the background that's in front of you.
Okay.
The total for the add alternates is $37,380. The total of base bid and the alternates that is in your background is correct, $378,688. The difference was when we added the water bottle filler to the drinking fountain, that added $1,700, and then it also added $45 to the bonding requirements. So that's the delta. I just wanted you to know that.
Okay.
That's fine.
Thank you.
There was concern on the water fountain that it didn't match what we do along the trail system in that it didn't have a bottle filler. And although that's $1,700, it's a lot safer with a bottle filler than drinking out of a fountain, and dribbling back onto it. So it's basically a safety issue in the long term.
Right.
And I think that's a valuable addition.
It'll make it easier to use, too.
So it does have the bottle filler now?
Yeah, no, it will now.
It will
Because
now.
we're requesting that as an addition.
Yeah.
So
It's going to be a really great facility.
these things are extremely expensive, but they are extremely durable. We call them 800-pound gorilla-proof. They are designed not to freeze. It's got a dog bowl, it's got a handicap bowl, it's got then a regular spigot, and then the bottle filler. So,
Okay. Good. All right, all good discussion. We had a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your ballots. Okay, motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Okay. Paragraph, item 7.7, administration. 7.1, consider an ordinance amending the Enid Municipal Code 2014, Title 1, Administration, Chapter 10, Public Records, to add Section 1-10-3, entitled Retention of Security Video Recordings at City Property, providing for repealer, savings clause, severability, codification, state law reference, and emergency.
Well, recently I received a call asking for a recording from one of our security cameras, and that made me realize, oh yes, those are records, and they are covered under the Open Meeting Act. So the reason why this is an emergency is that we've had no provision. We have security cameras. I don't think very many people have ever asked for a video, but they are records. So this will provide that all of our cameras cycle, and they keep the recordings until they need them for space. It's about 2 weeks. And so this state law allows us to say we will keep it until it's deleted. So clearly, if you want to look, have the record of one of our security cameras, you need to do it promptly. And the emergency is so that we can comply with state law as quickly as possible.
Okay?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve in a second. Please cast your ballots. Motion carries 6-0.
Move for the emergency.
Okay, motion for emergency.
Second.
That motion carried 6-0. Okay, cast your ballots. Motion carries 6-0 for the emergency. Thank you. Item number 7.2, consider resolution amending the 2020-2021 general fund budget by appropriating additional funds in the amount of $77,000 to increase the 2020-2021 appropriation amounts for the general fund transfers department, and amending the 2021 capital improvement fund budget by appropriating additional funds in the amount of $77,000 to increase the 2020-2021 appropriated amounts for the capital improvement department.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion second. Any discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Item number 8, consent agenda items.
I move to approve everything except 8.1.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor? Please cast your ballots. Motion carries 6-0. Do we now consider 8.1?
Yeah.
Okay. Item 8.1, approve execution of a 2-year collective bargaining agreement between the City of Enid and Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge Number 144.
I have some questions about this, and so I pulled it from the consent agenda. And Brian, if you don't mind fielding some of these questions between you and Carol, you can probably get some of these answered. I mean, first, let me just say this is a 2-year collective bargaining agreement. And part of why I'd like to take a minute and talk about some of this, we told the public that there would be an opportunity to give some input on this in a couple different meetings. And because this will dictate some of what we can do as a community if we do want to make some adjustments to our policing policies going forward. That a lot of what we can do is really solely in the hands of the chief of police pursuant to charter, but some of what can be addressed would be limited by the terms of this collective bargaining agreement. And I know that we're looking at some policy changes. I know that there are some things we can do better. There's some things we can do for accountability primarily. And so my real question, and I think the biggest issue in my mind as I've been reading and looking at suggestions for what communities can do to provide better oversight for policing, there's an idea of providing some kind of oversight of complaints for officers that is outside of the police chain of command. The idea being that if I make a complaint about a police officer that's regarding excessive use of force or racial bias, that currently if I'm understanding right, if that goes to the police department, it's investigated by the police department. If it goes to the Police Civil Service Commission, there's a different channel for that, but there's quite a bit of onus on the person making the complaint to prove the case. Is that accurate, effectively?
If you make a complaint to the Civil Service Commission, yes, it has to be a valid complaint. Now, let me go back a little bit. Not every complaint is going to be investigated internally. There's some that we have also sent to OSBI
And how
and
do,
have an independent investigation.
how do we make that determination currently?
I make that.
But there's not a policy in place, there's not a set,
I think it's addressed, say if it's a criminal investigation, I think it's addressed in the CBA on where it goes.
well, I guess part of what the CBA that gives me some pause, this idea of, it looks like there's pretty broad discretion to deem a complaint a minor complaint. And if it's deemed a minor complaint, then it seems like it's handled at a very different level, and that determination of whether a complaint is indeed minor looks like it's up to the supervisor and maybe the chief of police, but that there's not like an objective standard, and it's not an accountable standard. So if we have a chief of police who, subsequent to you, because I think you do a great job, but I don't want to set a policy relying on your good judgment when we might want a policy that is not dependent on having a great chief of police, you know? I'm interested in setting policy that isn't dependent, that's not reliant on one person's good judgment. So the idea that I think is broadly suggested, or has been suggested elsewhere, and I think has some merit, is the idea of some kind of civilian oversight structure that would at least provide a mechanism outside of that police chain of command to make a complaint. And I know, I mean, we've had somebody come speak to us who felt like they made a complaint about racial bias and that it wasn't taken seriously, and that they felt they weren't safe to make that report. Further, within the collective bargaining agreement, anonymous complaints are clearly deprioritized. That within the CBA, if you make an anonymous complaint because you don't feel safe making that complaint, that it's treated entirely differently. And I'm not sure that that's entirely fair to folks who may not feel safe making a complaint to the police with their name on it.
Making an anonymous complaint, I would say too, it's not, you can get a lot of frivolous complaints.
Yeah, no.
And that's not doing right by the officers either.
No, I agree.
If you take every anonymous complaint as dead serious, because if you look at social media, that's how most people are complaining on us anymore. They'll send a complaint to us and it's like, okay, let's talk.
Yeah.
So it's an anonymous complaint makes it very easy to make a complaint on an officer. But
and I
all
guess,
complaints are investigated.
And I guess the concern I have is that if an anonymous complaint is made and whoever in the chain of command or the chief of police, for inappropriate reasons, doesn't want it investigated, there's not a reporting mechanism. That we as the community don't, there's not any kind of independent reporting, there's not any kind of independent oversight, there's not a civilian complaints office that could be an avenue for someone who might not feel comfortable making a report to the police.
Every complaint, including anonymous, is going to be logged, and it's going to be investigated. I'm going to see every one of them, okay? Now, there is no mechanism for a civilian oversight complaint or a civilian board to investigate those complaints, because I don't feel like a civilian board could investigate a complaint.
Well, I mean, they have that in...
That said, the Civil Service Commission could ask to see all the complaints recently.
Okay.
They never have, but that's an option for them.
Well, I mean, there are civilian...
And that would be a civilian oversight of the complaints.
And there are civilian complaint offices in place in law enforcement departments in other parts of the country. I mean, that's not a unique idea, but I guess what I most want to see, and why I think it's worth talking about now, is if it's not addressed or provided for in the collective bargaining agreement, we can't do it for 2 years. But I think it would be important for there to be an independent avenue if I don't feel safe making a complaint to the police directly, and there are people who do not feel safe making a complaint directly to the police department. We have no avenue for them to do so.
Well, that sort of saddens me to hear, because there's been, I've got 40 years invested in this job, and we've had complaints over the years. Every complaint, to my knowledge, in my last 10 years as chief, has been looked at. There's been a lot that have been sustained over the years.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that officers have been taken to the Civil Service Board for more discipline than I can give.
Well, and Brian, I'm not trying to be critical of the.
You know, with everything that's going on now, I get it, I really do, but I don't think we're not addressing complaints by any means.
But I'm not trying to be critical of the job we're doing, but I do hear from folks, I don't feel comfortable making a complaint to police if I've been racially profiled. And I don't feel like I've got a good way to make that complaint. And when I hear that, in my mind, what feels right is there should be some avenue to do that. There should be some alternate channel. And if that alternate channel also provided some kind of oversight body to.
The alternate channel could be the Civil Service Board and come in and say, I'm not comfortable reporting this to police, I want to report it to you. And they could have the police department send it out for an independent investigation.
And I think that's a great idea, but that's not provided for in the collective bargaining agreement to the extent that complaints to the Police Civil Service Commission, they're not really addressed in the CBA at all, but.
That's addressed in charter.
But the complaints to the Police Civil Service Commission, as it's set up currently, if I make a complaint to the Police Civil Service Commission, I basically have to hire my own prosecuting counsel to pursue it. There's not any kind of.
Not necessarily, but not everybody does that. That makes a complaint to the Civil Service Commission. We've had them represent themselves and bring themselves in and bring evidence in over the years. Now, don't quote me on a specific one.
Yeah, and I understand that one can, but that's a whole, it's a much steeper climb.
Think about this, and Carol might correct me if I'm wrong. Say if you had somebody that's uncomfortable making a complaint to the police department, and they sent a letter, it's as simple as that, a handwritten letter even will work, to the Civil Service Board. And the Civil Service Board could have a hearing, and they could determine that it needs further investigation and order it to go to an independent OSBI, AG's office.
The Police Civil Service Commission has the authority to make that recommendation?
I would think that they probably do.
Because I look like that you were the only one who can make that recommendation.
On the internal complaints, but if somebody took one to the Civil Service Board, I think they would be able to direct where that would go.
Can they?
They can. It would be good to have a chief that is, or someone in City Hall to assist them, because there would probably be some money involved in it. Does OSBI cost anything? Okay. So you could take it to OSBI or the FBI or something, but.
And the Civil Service Board has their own legal counsel.
Okay.
Yes. Now, the other thing is that there's nothing, the fact that it's an anonymous complaint, there's nothing that stops, for instance, someone that is concerned talking to their city commissioner, who then listens to them and writes out the complaint and does it themselves. I mean, it doesn't.
I mean, I have no authority to make any kind of complaint within the charter or the collective bargaining agreement or,
Okay,
Sure you can.
Everyone can say, I think, someone told me about how they were arrested, and that person doesn't want to come forward, but I am concerned that middle-aged women that have a lot of pets are causing a lot of problems, and they're not being arrested. So we need to check into that. And so Commissioner Allen writes it up because I don't know, my husband is, I shouldn't be making a funny, but because this is serious. But if someone is concerned, they can come by my office, they can go to the city manager, they can go to any of you elected officials. They could actually also talk to the chief of police or the fire chief, and we can do a little work and send it into the department, and it can be, it doesn't have to be the person that is concerned that it's not going to be heard. It can be somebody else, but somebody has to sign their name.
Well, and again, let me be very clear. I'm not being specifically critical of you or our police department in specificity, but these are real complaints I've heard, and I'm trying to look at the academic research that's being done. I've made a couple references to it, and I think it's one of the best pieces of policy proposals in this area that's come up in the last few months, this Campaign Zero group that has compiled some really great academic research on the efficacy of what policies a community can implement to improve oversight, to improve policing.
Commissioner.
And part of what that, I'm trying to look at those potential changes, understanding that some of that's not at the commission level, some of that's at the chief of police level, some of it's at the charter level. But when I look at a 2-year agreement, and I go through that 2-year agreement, and I see with this set of potential things I'd like to consider in the coming months, what of that potential list to consider will be off the table if we approve a 2-year agreement?
I think, I wouldn't confuse the CBA as much with policy. I had a meeting with Commissioner Waddell. We had a great meeting, and he asked a lot of questions, and he got a lot of answers. And he found, and I believe he'll echo that next time you talk to him, that we've already started moving in a direction prior to a lot of everything that's going on now nationwide has been happening. Our policies are ever changing. We work with OMAG and through Lexipol, and we stay up and compliant with federal, state law and everything, and municipal code. A lot of our policies, use force policy, is going to be changing. And I have no problem changing the policies. There's a lot of things in Project Zero that I agree with. There's some things I don't. But the things that I don't aren't that serious. And, you know, we've been, in the last 10 years that I can say I've actually been in charge, our complaints have dropped. And, you know, a lot of our complaints are officer speeding, officer rudeness, things like that. Nothing very serious. There's been some serious complaints internally, and I made the complaint. So, you know, I think we can move on with policies and satisfy some of the issues. And I think you'd be surprised. And I'd love to have a conversation with you. And we can go over it.
And I think that's largely correct, but, I mean, again, going from that set of policy, the number 2 suggestion was the idea of a civilian complaints office. And it looks to me like the CBA would preclude a civilian complaints office, if that's a route we chose to go.
I think it would preclude the
And that's why I want to talk about it tonight.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think there's a way that, I think if the Civil Service Commission said, we want to review, during one of their regular meetings, we want to review the complaints for the last 6 months. I don't have a problem with that.
I think it's a great idea. And that maybe accomplishes the goal and accomplishes the providing that oversight mechanism without having to modify our charter or bargaining agreement.
Yeah, they are civilians, and I think that'd be within my management rights.
And you guys control who gets appointed. You just appointed somebody today. So that's very important when you make those appointments.
Yeah. Well, and again, I mean, I think that's a great solution. I think these are the conversations we want to have. I want to make sure that we're having these conversations where people can see them and hear them and have an opportunity to give us some input. And because we've told the public that the CBA was coming up for renewal, and there's been a lot of, we've got a much better collective bargaining agreement than a lot of law enforcement agencies do. There are far more oversight mechanisms in our agreement. We have a better police oversight mechanism than you see in many, many, many communities. We're doing better. But because it is a 2-year agreement, I just want to make sure we have this discussion before we jump in.
With the way this is set up, and usually when I go to some of the chiefs' meetings and conventions, I'm not really even allowed to talk much because of the situation that we're in with the charter and with what the commission does for us and the city does for us. So, you know, we're really unique and blessed in this community.
Well, I appreciate, and I really do appreciate everything you are doing to look at the policies and see how we can do better, and we do have a great force.
Yeah.
If that provides, if we can look at how we can use the existing Police Civil Service Commission, and Milton, you know, some of it's on you, man, but to the extent that we can.
That's why I'm here.
I know. Then I don't think I have any heartburn with collective bargaining agreement, but boy, when I go through it, that was the first thing, that was the only thing that really jumped out at me is, I just have, especially with that long a deal. Aside from, all those issues aside, is there anything else we should know about the CBA, I mean, as it's drafted, as it's been negotiated, that we should be concerned or aware of?
My biggest concern, my biggest concern going into negotiations was getting our starting salary into the market. Because we're 15 short right now, and that hurts.
Yeah.
And, you know, we should have 100 officers, and I've got 85, and I may lose another one here fairly soon. And I'm losing them mostly for money. And, you know, they're going to chase dollars. They're young. I get it. What we've done is restructured the pay plan, which upped the starting salary, and they top out in 7 years. So, say a 21-year-old comes in, 22-year-old, by the time he's 28, he's making a very good living wage. And so we're still a couple of years away, to match up with some of the metro. We'll never match up with, say, Stillwater starts at 49. We're at 41. City, I think, is 44. But we were underpaid. So that was my biggest goal, is to help with retention and get paid a decent wage so we can get good applicants. Because you get a lot of the people, it's just a job. Well, when I started, it wasn't. But nowadays, we want to get the best applicants we possibly can. So pay is the biggest thing, and I think it's a great deal.
With that said, I make a motion that we approve item.
Before we do that, we have some people that wanted to talk about police pay, and I guess this is the area we should do that. So let's let the constituents that signed up speak.
Thanks, Brian.
Mr. Randall.
First of all, I'd like to take just a moment to express my appreciation to our mayor and all of our city commissioners for taking the time and effort to serve our city the way that you do. Thank you very much. The reason I'm here today, this evening, I had an opportunity to speak with Chief O'Rourke several days ago, and he enlightened me on the recruiting issue of getting new police officers, the compensation that is paid to new police officers and their career, the difficulties of getting them to stay in Enid versus possibly move on to other cities where pay is higher pay. Gave me an example of Stillwater as an example, where there may be better opportunities for a police officer's spouse in that spouse's career, educational opportunities, maybe entertainment, what have you. And so I'm just here tonight to express my appreciation to our police officers and to be very supportive in the compensation increase that is being considered. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Adrian Autry?
Yes, good afternoon. Adrian Autry. Yeah, again, thank you for supporting the community. I think you guys are doing a great job identifying discrepancies in pay and skate parks and all the things. But in a matter of pay for the police officers, yeah, I support it entirely. I think that the police officers in any community are above average and shall be paid above average or at average cost. Obviously, there's some outliners in tech business, the cities that are higher earnings are available there, but and it probably is very difficult to retain that talent and keep it. So yeah, I approve. Of course, I think that community involvement is also probably important, right? Because there is a lot of discontent or complaints, like we talked about, or you guys were mentioning. And so those need to be addressed, or the community needs to also have an outlet for it. So, for example, I went through the community, or the academy, the community academy through it. An amazing program, and I recommend it to anyone that is even remotely curious on what the police officers in every community have to go through, and what goes on in small towns, medium towns, large cities. And so I think the outlet of that possibly started a couple of years ago and should continue, right? So with a higher wage, I would imagine, more community involvement with teenagers, just neighborhood type policing would be important, right? Now, I'm not complaining about it. I don't know if there could be more. It's just, there would be more value in pay, and then also more value to the community. And so what does that look like? I am not certain, but just the sheer impression that there is injustice happening is, it's sad. it is, but it may just be the impression of it, right? Not necessarily that something horrible is happening day in, day out in the police department. I am not saying that. There just needs to be an active exercising of community involvement of any sort. And so, of course, again, I'll take that as a pay increase, right? So those officers can stay in their community, be closer united with all ages, of all color, right? So that's all.
Okay, thank you. Lenita Norwood.
Good evening. My name is Lenita Norwood, and it's a pleasure to see you all again. Somebody tried to give me a seat, move my chair. But I am thankful to be here, and I'm thankful for the guidance that our mayor and all of the city commissioners have given us, our city manager, city attorney. It's a pleasure to work with y'all. A couple of things that I had was dealing with the civil unrest of the nation that we're dealing with, not only civil rights, but racial unrest. That if you look back at some of the newscasts, and it reminds me, it feels like we're living in the 1960s, and this is 2020. And it's sad that we're still going through the same thing. So couple of things that I've looked at, and I've talked to Chief in regards to racial profiling, because as we know, it's still going on currently. And one thing that I would like to see is established enforceable bans on the racial profiling. Just because I'm an African American doesn't mean that I can't drive a new car in my neighborhood. And oftentimes, when people drive new cars in Southern Heights area, they're followed until they leave the area. And then they're followed all the way out until they're pulled over. That shouldn't happen in 2020. It should not happen at all. I should feel safe enough to drive a new car and not be pulled over. Again, this is still occurring. And, at some point, we've got to look at it, make sure that we're not going to, if it's happening, it needs to happen in every neighborhood, not just a couple, maybe third ward or second ward. But if it's occurring, if you're just following people because they have new cars, it needs to not be designated to a couple of wards. One thing, we were looking at the Campaign Zero, limit use of force, of course, the chokeholds. And I really like the idea what Mr. Ezell said about the independent investigations. If I investigate myself, I'm cool, I'm okay. The Bible says, in my eyes, I'm right. But the Lord weighs the spirit. So that's one thing that we always have to think about when it comes to investigating myself. I'm pretty much going to be okay. Continue the de-escalation training. Maybe have alternate responses to people that are in crisis, or be able to be trained to identify if someone is mentally ill or if they're going through a health crisis. Someone sent me a question and said, what type of racial sensitivity training is given? Since the community is made up of blacks, whites, Spanish, Asian, Pacific Islanders, Native Americans, are we getting the training that we need in the police department as well as the city government, so that we are, that we understand, that we grow in understanding of every culture? And you guys have pretty much talked about the advisory board with the civil service police. That's mainly all that I have. I enjoy the open door that we have with Police Chief O'Rourke, as well as Assistant Chief Skaggs. They have opened their doors and they're readily available to talk with us. And we will continue the conversations, and we appreciate them taking the time to visit with us.
Okay. Marty, thank you. Mr. Mitchell.
I'm speaking because I was forced to.
You don't have to.
I don't have to.
That's fine. I can give you a pass.
Well, I think in the vein of being, open, it's important for our police department to be properly funded. Now, that's really, really important, because I hear so much stuff and so much talk about defunding police, and that's asinine. I mean, that's just a ridiculous thing. I'm sure that there should be an expansion as far as the role of police in the community, because you don't need an individual with a gun dealing with a person who has mental issues. But I think that the Civil Service Commission is the commission that should become active for civilian oversight. And I think that with something like that in place, then our chief is a person of great character, and he's a very fair-minded individual. He really is, and he's progressive in his thinking. I don't think he goes far enough, but I do respect his progressive thinking. I really do. Can we go further than that? Yes. Can it happen overnight? No. But can we begin the steps so that accountability is there for our police department? Yes, it can. And even though it may come slower than some individuals may want it, the important thing, though, is that we do make progress in those areas. So I've read the same things that Commissioner Ezell has read, and there are a lot of very good, a lot of really good information, a lot of good, really good ways to move forward that I've been able to see and ascertain. And I think that Enid is on the verge of doing those things. I think we are small-minded, though, in our thinking, because I hear so much about Enid being a small-town community, and I understand that, but I think we're too small in our thinking, because if our police department is funded properly, then we are going to not only be able to retain policemen, but we can attract good candidates. We're not going to be able to attract good candidates if we don't aggressively address the pay issue. So it has to be addressed. But we cannot address that and negate not dealing with the social issues like Ms. Norwood is talking about, and like many people of color are concerned about. So we have to simultaneously address those things. We have to move along and carry them both forward at the same time. And it's not a reflection, or especially a negative reflection, on our chief of police. Right. Because so many things that we hear and so many things that's expounded upon, it gives a negative connotation to all police. That's ridiculous. I mean, all policemen aren't bad. If you have one that's bad, we'll have to be able to address that and deal with that. But as they say, one bad apple can spoil a whole bunch, but it can't if you bring it out, or if you move it out, or if you remove it. That doesn't happen. So that's the role that I'm looking forward to as being a part of the Civil Service Commission, is hopefully that commission becomes a part of the oversight committee for the police department, so that he doesn't have to have the perception, because its perceptions are really important in these days and times. If people perceive that they're not being treated fairly or that they're not being heard, then that perception brings about other complications. And I don't think we have to worry about those if we do have an oversight committee, and I think that should be a part of the Civil Service Commission. So with that being said, I think that's great, but I'm still not leaving this chamber without mentioning one more time that our mayor and our city commissioners should be paid a salary. And they should be paid, absolutely. The number, and I know they're not going to clap because it seems self-serving, but it is not, because the truth of the matter is they put in the hours and the time to, this is not an easy job that they do. My wife was so glad I didn't win the seat for mayor. And we are every day saying, go George, go, go George, go. And he's done a fantastic job. And I'm so absolutely proud of him for what he's done. Yeah.
But thank you. My wife's as unhappy as yours is happy.
But the truth of the matter is that with our city commissioners, with them being paid, then it gives them even more of a vested interest into the community. Besides, I'm not, and this is no reflection on our commissioners, we're old. Yeah. I was running for mayor, and look at that. George, we're hanging in there. Yeah, we're hanging. But I do think that with our city commissioners being paid, our mayor being paid, I do think that we can attract a younger commission.
I'm only 34 years old.
I know, and I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you. But
Me too.
But when it comes down to it, this is a career. I mean, this is a career being a part of the city commission. It's a career, and it's a step for the city, but it's also a step for our commissioners to be able to move into higher positions and higher. You want me to say that?
I guarantee this won't be on the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay. But if they aspire to other offices in the legislature and in the as representatives and in the state senate, then this is a great stepping stone. It really is. And it's a great platform for individuals to be able to learn and get their feet wet and get the experience that they need to move into higher positions, judges and like that. But so that part of it is very, very important. And even though I'm only on the Civil Service Commission, I'm pushing hard for this commission to be paid. Yeah. And we need to get off our duff and do something about it before we don't have anyone. You know, because it's just not an easy job to do. So, what's his name? White people did what? Stole, changed, and rewrote history and said it was theirs. Black history was left out. Baby steps. Okay. Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, and that's a part of the educational system. I know it's not a part of this deal right here, but it is a part of the educational system. And people of color, another part that I intend to do as being on the Civil Service Commission is get out in the community and encourage minorities to get involved. Good. To get involved in the government, get involved in every aspect of it. And that includes the school board, just every area. And so these things are very important to me. And being old, I think we need to attract younger people because they do have fresher ideas about things. And they just don't think exactly the way we do. And I'm not saying that we don't need older people, but we do because they have wisdom and they can give counsel and like that. But we do need young strength and innovative ideas so that we can move forward as a community. Enid needs to move forward as a community. We're losing businesses.
Mr.
They're
Mitchell?
shutting down. And so let's goodbye.
You got the hook. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments, as always. I didn't see any others that wanted to address specifically police matters. Did anybody else have anything else? Okay. All right.
With a motion and a second, we need to vote on it still.
Okay, I have a motion and a second on the collective bargaining agreement. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. All right. Item number 9. Now, there's a few people signed up for water supply. Was that part of the consent?
No, I guess that could be. I don't know if that's about chlorine in 11.1
Okay.
or if that's a public comment.
Okay, all right, thank you. Item number 9, recess to convene as the Enid Municipal Authority. Item number 10, all trustees of the Enid Municipal Authority regular meeting are in attendance except Commissioner Waddell. Item number 11, the Enid Municipal Authority regular meeting is now in session. Item number 11.1, waive finance procedures manual requirements and award a blanket purchase order in the amount of $60,000 for the acquisition of chlorine gas for use in the water treatment process for the period July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2021.
Yes, Mayor Ward, this is an annual item that we do. This type of chlorine treatment is what our water treatment plant currently requires, and it is not, the way that our plant's set up, we have to get them in cylinders, and that is only offered through Brentag, and that vendor has provided us a quote for what they're willing to provide those services for this entire fiscal year that we're beginning.
Okay. All right. We did have Bill and Eleanor Taylor. Is this the issue that you wish to speak to?
Thank you for the opportunity to address the council. I appreciate your service, especially Susan Dugan. Her mother served the city well also. And Susan did such a good job. I think she learned well from her previous employer. Would you care to guess who that was? Now, I wanted to just say that we're fortunate to have such a good water supply here in Enid, that our drinking water is very good. Our water treatment plant is being relocated, rebuilt, and updated. And it would be a wonderful consideration for the residents of Enid if the city council would have an article published in the News Eagle of the advantages and disadvantages, the pros and cons of having a reverse osmosis treatment applied to the water. That way, all of our residents can have the advantage of not simply good water, but have excellent drinking water that would be as good as anywhere in the world. The overall health cost savings of our Enid residents would eventually more than offset the cost of this project. And I would ask that this be explained to our residents.
Okay, thank you, sir. Lenita, did you also want to speak to water?
Just had a quick question in regards to, once we get the Call Lake project, is there a projected amount of money that our monthly bills would be?
Do you mean increases?
Mm-hmm. Would there be increases or decreases in the amount of our bills?
Yes, there's, with or without Call Lake, there's already built-in increases every year in January. I believe they're 3% increases.
Wow.
Is that right, Aaron?
2%.
2%?
2%.
Okay, 2% increases for water every year. That was last adjusted in 2014, contemplating the Call Lake project. So it does go up a bit every year.
And that means water and sewer both will go up because they seem to be the same cost.
Yes, you're exactly right on that.
So a 4% increase then, is that what we're looking at?
2% for each line, so
Yeah.
it's 2% to your overall bill when each.
2% to the overall bill,
Yeah.
okay. The other question I had with the water is, with Enid losing so many businesses and, that are closing and leaving, and how will we be able to pay for this multi-million-dollar expansion? Would it cost us more?
Well, that's a good question. With sales tax, including the sales tax that was approved by the people, amounted to 1% that's, I believe, collectible out till 2052, I think. And also with water revenues.
Okay.
We know that cost is very important on the project, so I know the commission, as is staff, is monitoring the cost very closely. We've hired a CMAR, construction manager at risk, with a specific contract that we should have a GMP by the end of November. That should be around $240 million or less, preferably, so that all those numbers, the engineering costs and the other costs we have that are other than construction costs, add up to $315. With those financial projections we have, we can afford to pay for $315 and at least $10 million of other improvements over the next 30 years.
Okay. And the last one, just real quick, we had these storms back to back, the wind storms, and a little 94, she's 95 now, she turned 95 on Friday. She called and asked me about when the tree limbs were going to be picked up at her house. And when she called, we found out that she had to have called the city public works by June 12th, and we had at least 3 storms that tore up the trees. So how would a 95-year-old find out when the last date for free pickup would occur? How would they know that? Because they don't go online.
Well, that's a great question. We do have online sources. I will tell you, we've actually already been to Southern Heights once already after the storm. We will be going back again because I know there's a lot of brush piled up, as there is in other areas of the city. We've struggled a bit. I think everybody and several commissioners have talked to me about that. We believe we've gotten the core of the city now. I believe we're working on the southwestern quadrant. We still have some stuff up in the northwest area, and we have Southern Heights. So we intend to go back.
Okay.
So what I would tell that lady is that we will be
95-year-old.
back.
Okay.
So she's apparently on the list for sure now, but when we get to an area,
she's not, because she didn't want to, well, she couldn't afford to pay the $20. That was her biggest concern.
When we go back to the area, every brush pile we see, we're going to pick up.
Okay.
That'll be
Without
my
the
direction.
$20 charge?
Well, what we've done is, as we try to clean up the storm damage, what we run into is people keep putting more stuff out there, whether it's storm
I
damage or
understand.
not. And so our normal policy is to, for a load, charge $20. But certainly we'll look to err on the side of taking care of people. So I know when we get back to areas, we're picking up every pile. So I think it's probably difficult for the solid waste department. When they're going through there, they do have automation, they have cartograph, but to figure out who called in by the 12th or not, I'm sure we have a system for that, but I also know that we see a pile of limbs, we're picking it up, so.
Okay. She was really concerned about it, and she called me, so
Yes. and
said I would ask.
You're a great advocate for her, and so that's a good way, as certainly as we put out via press releases, and so it's in the newspaper, should be in the newspaper from time to time too, but word of mouth is probably a good way for us too, with ambassadors in the community like yourself. So yeah, if you go back and tell her we'll be back, and we'll be getting everybody in there, and we'll be looking just to pick the limbs up,
And a lot of
probably not worry
people
about the charge.
don't get the newspaper, especially if you're older, you're 95. $1 a paper is a lot. So I know she doesn't get the paper. She doesn't go online. So I know that as advocates, we do have to look out for each other. But for some reason, I wasn't aware that the 12th was the cutoff date, because it seemed like we had a storm every weekend in June. But I do thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you.
And also, I'd like to say, Gerald, me and you had a conversation about, we no longer have Pegasus anymore. And we know that a lot of the elderly do not go on live stream. We had talked about maybe recording and putting it on the air maybe a few days or a week or so later. So I don't know how that's going to work out. I don't know if you remember that conversation
Oh, yeah,
that we
I
had.
remember the conversation. We are still putting a DVD out there. I believe it's on Channel 12 or 112, and I know there's at least one church putting a DVD out there on Channel 11.
Emmanuel does.
We lost our capability when we made the decision as a commission to move away from, or at least our recommendation to you, and we moved away from it at the end of last year. We didn't find a whole lot of folks that say they're watching TV.
It's because we went online to find out, and the people who watch TV don't go online. It's a conversation that we will have again.
Okay.
And Derwin and I are excited about bringing this up, and when we talk to Suddenlink with our negotiations, maybe we can work out something with them or with Enid Public Schools. So
The public schools have their own channel, but yes,
I can
sir.
say that safely since Jonathan isn't here.
Yes, yes.
Because I got chewed out the last time I brought it up.
With the Suddenlink franchise agreement, I would think that'll be one of the things we'll be asking for. We'll need a significant upgrade in equipment
Yeah.
to be able to get back. But so in our conversation, I think I mentioned that we're doing the DVD. I think that's
You did.
That's
You
the
did,
extent of
Gerald.
our capability right now. But I think that we'll have on that DVD we can put current information like, hey, we're still picking up limbs, or in fact, Monday I mentioned it in my 1:30 deal. I just don't know if that was a segment that got picked up to put on DVD. So we will try to do that in the meantime until we can get to a better place. Part of the transition was we spent too much time producing TV shows, to be quite frank. We need to perfect our streaming internet content, be able to take that and put it on TV. And so I'm hopeful that we can do that in the future. But I agree with you, with Suddenlink still out there, we're going to be talking about that with them too.
Yeah, that's what you had mentioned to me. And also I don't know if Channel 19 is still the education channel.
Yes.
Or not. I believe it's 19, because 11 and 12 was Pegasus, but I think 19 was the education channel. So we could use one of those channels if possible.
Yeah, we'd want to keep all three of them, but essentially we've given 19 to the school system, and they are still running that. I can't tell you, I'm not a watcher of 19, so I don't know what they have on it, but I'm sure it's something.
Gerald, in addition to that, don't we put that information on the water bill about when we're going to pick up limbs and those kind of things?
We do from time to time. I don't know if we did specifically on limbs, but we can run we do from time to time. That is a great way of once a month, everybody gets a water bill.
Yep.
On the back, we can advertise.
And every community that I work in, we do that always in every one of them. We send out city information on the water bill, and nobody ever reads it. But at least we have the recourse of saying, it was on your water bill.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
We are on the chlorine gas purchase item, and
Yeah.
I just don't want to,
Yeah.
Carol's sitting over there going,
We getting a little off track, girl? All right.
I was just enjoying the meeting.
Yeah. Does it have to do with,
Just curiosity, has anybody ever really thought about maybe helping utilize RSVP? That maybe some of the seniors could call in and maybe they could actually be aware, or even maybe working into some of their agenda where they might be able to call some seniors and talk to them if they ever have questions about certain things that can be like that. RSVP is that's a good outlet.
That's a great idea. I can reach out to Christy Baker.
yep. All right, yeah, thank you. Okay, get back on the agenda here. I don't think did anybody else have anything dealing with water?
Yes, sir, real quick. So since we are on water, so the 2% increase, if I'm correct, that is annual, year to year, correct?
Yep.
And how long has that been in force? And
6
how-
years.
Six, and how long will that go into the future? Indefinite, or is there a set timeframe?
More or less indefinitely.
More or less indefinite. So in 10 years, I mean, that 2% will be ultimately significantly higher. Was that part of the agreement when the project had started, or is that funding that later is added to the to us citizens?
Before the agreement. We put that funding in place before we did the sales tax for the pipeline.
And so since it is indefinite, I would just like to, I mean, this probably has already brought up, there will be a point where individual citizens, will reach a point of frustration, I would imagine, And since it is indefinite is a pretty big word. I mean, I don't think, I mean, even the Federal Reserve doesn't say indefinite 2%. The aquifer will be depleted further by the individual residents. So I would say indefinite is not the correct.
But that's the pipeline part.
Correct, but then you would be paying $300-400 in 10 years, right? I mean, the things vary.
It's not that much. I mean,
Well, everybody's going to water differently, I understand. But that point will be a break even to actually have your own what? Your own well, which will take an undue strain on the actual aquifer, which is what we were trying to protect in the first place. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
11-2. Oh, wait, did we vote on the
I
chlorine?
don't think we voted yet. Okay.
Did we make a motion?
Have not.
I'll make a motion to approve the chlorine purchase.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your ballots. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. 11.2, approval of claims in the amount of $557,379.57.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Cast your ballots. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Item number 12, adjourn to convene as the Enid Public Transportation Authority. Item 13, all trustees of the Enid Public Transportation Authority regular meeting are in attendance except Commissioner Waddell. Item number 14, Enid Municipal Transportation Authority regular meeting is now in session. Item number 14.1, consider authorizing the filling of Enid Public Transportation Authority's 2018 funding year, Section 5339B Supplemental Agreement Number 1 between the Oklahoma Department of Transportation and Enid Public Transportation Authority.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Cast your ballots. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Item number 14.2, approval of claims in the amount of $1,746.74.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Cast your ballots. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Item number 15, adjourn to reconvene as the Enid City Commission. Item number 16, public comment. Now, I had about 2 pages of comments. Most have been discussed. Did anyone sign up that did not have a chance to speak yet that wishes to speak? Yes, sir? Oh, I marked you off because you talked once, but go ahead, Mr. Wallace.
I actually wanted to speak on the COVID-19 breaking news.
All right.
As far as I can tell, anyway. I have reason to believe that is a complete lie. I can prove that mathematically. It is and was a fail-safe in case World War III broke out. I can prove it. I can also prove without a shadow of a doubt that God, Jesus, the Bible, all of it is real, mathematically real. How? Stay tuned. Give me a press release, give me some kind of interview with somebody that can go through the information that I've provided for everybody since the day George Floyd died to now. And if you don't feel the same at the end of it, then we can go from there. But right now, I don't know what else to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I'd like to speak of a potential business that could come to Enid as well. There's a boom of electric cars, in particular Tesla. I read in the newspaper, in Forbes magazine, I think it was, that they may go to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And if that's the case, is what things is the city doing that potentially could bring third-party companies that may be able to do business with Tesla to maintain and be more diversified in the city of Enid for more jobs, not just for me, but possibly for my children, their children, for the future. But essentially what I'm saying is, are we looking forward to the future, or are we just looking at just things old-fashioned? It would be one step forward, that we could be ahead of the game to lure companies of the future?
Yeah, I believe we are. The Enid Regional Development Authority, that's their mission, and they go to different places where they can try and attract different businesses like the Oshkosh Air Show to try and attract airline kinds of businesses. They go to, Vegas has a ICSC conference where all the major retailers converge. So they go to many different forums and many different places to try and attract business here. Could we get a spin-off business if Tesla comes? Maybe. But they're working on a lot of stuff. Many of the things you can't read about in the paper because they're covered by non-disclosure agreements. If somebody's wanting to move here, they don't want to tell all their competitors they're moving here. So some of it has to be kind of close hold until they can work it out. Also, if somebody finds out they got a big business looking at an area, all of a sudden the property that they were looking at doubles in price because they think they got a buyer. So there's many good reasons that we need to keep part of that close hold until the businesses come in. But yeah, I can assure you that, that there's a lot of people that are working to bring business to Enid.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. That's all I have for public comments. Ladies and gentlemen, we're adjourned.